Jesus, please be with me. All right, I see people starting to come in. Just gonna chill a little bit till about 7:05, and then we're gonna get started with the panel. So for those of you that are already here, can everyone just tell me a little bit about how they're doing, how their day is going, let's get the conversation started. I am a little nervous, so just want to like get the ball rolling.
Okay, so I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan. How are you
Hi,
doing? I hope you're
Megan.
having a lovely day.
Thank you. Likewise.
Um, yeah, so what did you ask? You just want us to introduce ourselves?
Yeah, just tell me about how your day is going, what's going on, nothing crazy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm actually currently in South Africa right now, so it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, but I really wanted to be on this call, and my day has been going well,
Wow.
and yeah.
Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much, and
so
shout out to South
if you
Africa.
have any instances, yes, of course. This will be the last time I'll be able to talk, but I'll just be sending messages through the chat. But I wanted to make sure I was on the call, and looking forward to connecting with the Crown campaign after the call as well.
Likewise, thank you so much. We'll definitely reach out. And once again, thank you so much from South Africa. Those are bragging rights for me. So now I'm super hype. We're going a little international. So thank you for joining. I really do appreciate it.
Hi, this is Romana. Thank you so much for having this call today. I'm really interested to find out more. I'm really excited to hear from Bernice, Manka, and Shameka, who is doing some really exciting work, as well as the rest of you. And I'm having a good day and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you so much for moderating, Karla.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure the ladies of the Crown campaign do as well. So we're about to get started in just about a minute. Just we're letting people in as they come, just want to make sure we have more of an audience so that way we can begin. And yeah. Hi, Annalise. How are you? I hope all is well. Whenever you have the chance, if you can just introduce yourself and your role with Curls on the Block, I would definitely love to hear a little bit more about that before we get started.
Do you want me to talk?
Yeah, just wanted you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your role with Curls on the Block. I know that you guys work closely with the Crown campaign, so I just wanted to know a little bit more about that before we get started.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, let's see. Well, first of all, hey. My Wi-Fi is going crazy, so I apologize if I cut out. But yeah, my name's Annalise, and I am living here in Colorado and started Curls on a Block to attract girls of all curls and colors to embrace, explore, and empower their natural selves using beauty to connect with STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. My background is as a special education teacher with a master's in education, and I've taught now 7 years, and I transitioned to be a community college adjunct professor, and a couple other stuff I'm still doing, a couple other things. But the programming has transitioned to become virtual, and so I've been adapting things along the way. There's a Miss Curly Self-Esteem pageant where contestants are it's used to be a fundraiser, so folks pay, but it helps fund work throughout the rest of the year, and our trips to like Curl Fest or other natural hair festivals and stuff like that. The curriculum first starts with embracing, exploring, and then empowering our natural selves. So embracing, so we learn about the history of hair. Exploring, that's where we make the connections between, you know, the things we do every day and how it connects to STEAM. And then empower, being able to uphold the 10 curly commandments, which includes, you know, uplifting your fellow curl friend and making sure you recognize if her curls are dope, and just supporting each other is just really important. So Curls on the Block was very excited to work on the Crown campaign and you know, build partnership and really be a voice of the people here in Denver, Colorado. So like families and, you know, our younger girls were able to present, show up, and just feel the curly love. So I really enjoyed Curls on the Block, and I'm glad that you all have the deeper than hair conversation, because at the end of the day, whether you have hair or not, you still got to love who you are. And that's where we're at. If you got a perm, you got a no hair, buzz cut, afro, whatever. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share. And I'm excited to hear you all.
No problem. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Annalise. I really appreciate it. So now we're going to get started with our event. I want to thank you all so much for attending the Deeper Than Hair conversation. It is our inaugural event with the Crown Campaign and myself. I'm actually a part of the Crown Campaign. I'm their inaugural fellow. However, this is also a project for class. So it's a collaboration that we're doing together. So the point of this conversation is that hair is not just an aesthetic. It's not just a matter of beauty. It's a matter of your identity. You know, in recent cases, if you heard about DeAndre Arnold, the teenager who had to cut off his dreadlocks, well, he didn't, but that was what the school was implying in order to be able to attend his graduation. That was a big case that, you know, sparked the United States. And also we know that, what's his name again? Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union took him to the Oscars for Matthew Cherry's Hair Love short film. So that was pretty much a big step in that. And also, hair identity is not just about having one specific type of hair. It's not just about curly hair. It's about having locks, having wigs, weaves, twists. It's not just limited to one hairstyle, and this conversation focuses more on women of color. As we all know, we are usually marginalized and we face a lot of microaggressions due to our hair. So I just wanted to set up this conversation to educate everyone on how these things go deeper than hair, pun intended. And yeah, there's just a lot of things that we deal with that a lot of people from the outside looking in are not aware of. So I brought it to the table. So before I introduce our amazing panelists, I want to see you guys hit the reaction button with a thumbs up if you've experienced discrimination either in work or in school. Or just in society in general. Okay, we have one person, 2 people, 3, 4. I'm gonna give myself a thumbs up because there have been a lot of comments made about my hair, but I learned to love it, so it does no longer bother me anymore. All right, well, that's good to know. So this is also another reason why it's important to have these conversations, because there are so many people that deal with these things and they either don't speak about it or they go to altering their hair because they want to fit in, in their job or in schools. This is something that I have done before. I've personally straightened my hair for an interview to look more appropriate, but then through the work that I have done and through just appreciating my identity, there's no such thing as appropriate hair. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let our amazing panelists take the show, starting with Dr. Rumala.
Hello, everyone. I am a co-founder of the Crown Campaign, and it's a campaign aimed at ending discrimination and injustice, including hair discrimination. And I also lead work on health equity systems transformation and engaging people with lived experience of inequity. Thank you for inviting me to the panel, Karla.
No problem. And now we're going to move it
Hi,
to
everyone. Shemeka Ebony here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Shemeka Ebony here, co-founder of the Crown Campaign. Very excited to be here. As co-founder on the team, I really lead the community engagement component, making sure that people with lived experience that have faced hair discrimination, voices are heard, as well as illuminating the brilliant programs like Curls on the Block that have been doing this great work, dealing with our self-esteem and holding opportunities for women of color and young girls of color to illuminate their passions and their gifts and not being judged by their hair. And I'm so happy to be a part of this conversation with everyone tonight.
Thank you so much, Shemeka. We're now going to move it on to Crystal.
Thank you. Sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Richardson. I'm out in North Carolina. I've been working very closely with Manka and Shemeka and Dr. Rumala and the Crown Campaign for the past year and a half or so, just traveling, doing some public speaking, getting the community educated about why it's important to pass legislation such as the Crown Act, and really connecting people to understanding the importance and their role in how we get this legislation passed. So I'm very excited that you're taking time out of your evening to hear some of the information we have to share, and just thrilled to have you all and very excited to get started.
Thank you so much, Crystal. We're now moving it to Manka.
Hi, everyone. This is Manka Kimeng, and I'm a nurse by training and a researcher. And my role on the Crown Campaign is, well, officially the director of research, but really is just trying to understand, go deeper, like we're trying to do today, kind of what are the health implications or what are the psychosocial implications of hair discrimination, and then working with the whole team to bring back that information to our community. That way we can speak up and advocate for ourselves and our community in a larger way.
Thank you so much, Manka. So just before we get the panel questions started, just the way this is going to go. So I'm going to ask each panelist a set of questions based on their expertise. And then in the last few minutes, like about the last 15, 20 minutes, it'll be a Q&A. So if you have any questions that arise as we go, just write them in the chat and they will be answered in the order that they were received. I know I sound like a call center saying that, but we just want to make sure that everything stays on order. So if you're not speaking at the moment, please mute yourself, and yeah, let's get this rocking. So the first question, the theme of these set of questions is going to focus on hair identity, hair history, and systemic racism with Dr. Rumala. So the first question I want to ask you is, can you share the connection between hair identity, hair history, and the systemic racism?
Sure, Karla, thanks for the question. So we know that in communities of color, lots of natural hair as well as natural inspired hairstyles, such as we've seen, such as afros, braids, bantu knots, as well as locks, and many other natural inspired styles. They have strong historical, political, as well as cultural and social significance for us. And they also have significance in terms of our families as far as our identities. And we've also seen how this expression of our identity and our cultural practices through our natural hairstyles has also resulted in discrimination, which, as has been alluded earlier, has impacted us in terms of our health, our employment and economic opportunities, as well as our policies. And we're seeing this not only in the United States, but globally. And these have profound roots in our history in terms of systemic racism. And so it's really important that we understand the historical context of our hair, because this really helps us to understand how systemic racism has been propagated in policies. So for example, Dr. Patricia O'Brien Richardson, who's one of the Crown Campaign collaborators in academia out at Rutgers, she provides an in-depth historical context of what this looks like. And her research shows that that Black people have a rich history with hair beginning in Africa. And especially when we look at the earliest African civilizations, hair was considered a cultural marker and used to indicate things such as marital status, age, wealth, and rank, as well as tribal affiliation. And then we see here in America, in our society, as well as other places, where hair has historically been used as a tool for systemic racism against both Black women and Black men and people of color in general. And so we've been punished and stigmatized for our hair. And then we also see in our history in the United States, where during the colonial period and later during the Jim Crow era, our natural hair came to be described as messy and sweaty and knotty and dirty and wild and unkempt. And if those words sound familiar to those in the audience, it's because these same words are being propagated in many of the employment policies today, where our hair is being described as wild, messy, nappy, unprofessional, and perpetuating these same forms of structuralized and systemic racism today in terms of grooming policies. So that's what we're trying to combat.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer. And the other question I have for you is, what is your hair story and how is this connected with the Crown Campaign's local and global efforts?
Sure, I'll go over one part of my hair story. One part of it is actually when I graduated from Columbia University, and I was informed in a professional development workshop at a national conference that my hair should not distract from my excellent credentials. And I was really shocked to hear this from a well-meaning, this person was seemingly well-meaning and trying to offer me guidance and mentorship, but I didn't understand how hair that grew naturally out of my scalp could be labeled as a source of barriers. And some of the styles that were socially mentioned as socially acceptable in this workshop were pretty much straight hairstyles that didn't reflect the texture of my natural hair. And so as a result of this, I began to wonder, okay, is my hair serving as a source of barriers? Since then, I've had the chance to travel to more than 30 countries globally. And in my most recent travel, this is to India and Nepal, I was able to educate on the beauty of my natural hair. A few of the locals had never touched Afro-textured hair, and so I allowed them to touch my hair, and it was a beautiful experience. And this is part of the essence of the Crown campaign, where we're seeking to, and founded on the premise of ending discrimination of all forms, including hair discrimination, through educational efforts, through advocacy efforts, and also to support efforts for the Crown Act. And through our collaborations with wonderful collaborators such as Karla's on the Block and others who are part of the Crown Village, who are just making such a wonderful difference both locally and globally. And so that's what we stand on, really working as a village with our talent to combat discrimination of all forms.
Well, thank you so much for your answer, Dr. Rumala. I really appreciate it, and I can definitely relate. My hair has been a barrier as far as getting jobs sometimes, and at the moment, like I mentioned, I did feel a little down because of that, because it is my identity, but at the end of the day, it is my identity, so that's not something that I'm planning to change for a job, and I feel like if a job requires me to change it, then that's probably not the job for me, so thank you so much for that. Now we're going to go on to our second set of questions for Shameka, which the theme would be hair in professional environments. So Shameka, if you can please talk to us about how hair discrimination has shown up in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Karla, for bringing up this powerful point. We are seeing across the country stories, even when we're transitioning from high school to college, we're all prepared to be conscious of how our hair looks when we're going to apply for jobs, going for interviews, and we're seeing hair discrimination show up in the workplace in the form of our grooming policies that are current and active. Bernice brought up a lot of information around language that is being used historically as well as currently. And when we're looking at current workplace grooming policies, we're finding words like your hair must be groomed, it cannot be unkempt, it can't look unseemly, and for whatever reason, this language has been acceptable for us. And I always lift up the point that because we were already strapped for needing to find jobs, oftentimes we look over these things, or we will amend how we look to assimilate to our workplace environment because we need to have that money come into our household, whether we're taking care of ourselves or taking care of our family. So we will cut our dreads, we will perm our hair, we will wear a wig, and we will assimilate to this westernized culture that limits our capacity to be ourselves. And what we're lifting up is challenging all of us to be able to look at our workplace grooming policies and see what words can be changed, and then also just feeling empowered to be able to lift this up as a form of discrimination and seeing how we can transform what may be an opportunity for people to be educated and learn a little bit more about what hair discrimination is and this language that causes microaggressions to come in. The most common microaggression that we see come up in our workplaces are when someone comes up to you and tells you, I liked your hair when it was ... So I liked it when it was straight. I liked it when it was braided. I liked it when it was curly. And the powerful thing about that is they didn't pay for it. But because we're trying to fit in, because we're trying to assimilate, because we're not trying to ruffle feathers or bring attention to ourselves, we have been forced to be conditioned to be able to have to withstand these acts of discrimination against us. And now we are sharing this message through the Crown campaign to lift up and empower and remind people of their voice and the power of their voice, the power of their actions to change that as it's showing up and as you're seeing it, that you as an individual have the power to transform the culture of your office and really be okay with being yourself fully without discrimination or repercussions.
Got it. Thank you for your answer. And another question would be, in what ways can people be protected in professional environments when it comes to their natural hair?
People protections are going to absolutely begin with looking at the policy that exists. I think there's unique cases that will change based on what state you're in. I know here in North Carolina, we're like a hire and fire at will state. So they could absolutely discriminate against you because of your hair and fire you, but never have to give you that as a reason. So it does make it interesting, but when we go after these policies and create those opportunities to change the language and get support around it, we can advocate for these changes to be established so that it can stand and it will live longer than whether we're removed or not. This policy change will be able to be enacted. We had a case here in Charlotte where there was a group of white women colleagues that began a petition against a Black coworker because her hair was unkempt to them. And they signed a petition against her for her to go get something done to her hair. And when she complained about it, it even made it into the court system when she tried to file suit, and it was thrown out. So we have to create policy to create this change so that we can put some power behind us advocating for ourselves when we are experiencing these injustices. We have examples here in North Carolina also at the city and county level with municipalities incorporating the inclusion of the adaptation of their their discrimination policies to include under race these various hairstyles that women of color and men of color often exhibit when they're working in the public eye. So they're amending and adapting their versions of the Crown Act to be able to lift this as protections and policy at the municipal level. So there's various ways that you can begin. It just all begins with a conversation and a desire to change, but we have to look at our school policy for our children. We have to look at our workplace policy to see if there's opportunity for us to be able to rally together with other people of color in the office that have experienced discrimination, or to prevent others in the office from experiencing discrimination by creating opportunities to educate those companies and those organizations that have these antiquated policies in place and enlighten them on the discriminatory language and make suggestions on how to change it.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer. So now we're going to move on to the next topic, which surrounds legal issues related to hair. We're going to have Crystal speak a little bit about this. So just briefly, what is your experience with hair discrimination? If you can just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I would say definitely in employment, I experienced hair discrimination early on in my early 20s, where an employer literally asked me during the training, could I unbraid my dreadlocks? And they said it just like that and took me out of the training. And really, I think at the time it didn't really hit me that that type of experience could impact me psychologically and how I show up in the workplace. And then years later, as an attorney, being able to show up in the courtroom and in other, just professional, places, having the thought in the back of my mind about how you're being perceived just based on your choice of how you wear your hair. And this is how my hair naturally grows out of my head. So I think a lot of us have a story that is very similar, or on some level where they had someone say something, rude or abrupt to them in the workplace that they probably shouldn't have. And so that's what connects me to this Crown campaign, because it's so near and dear to my heart, because I know I've experienced it myself, and I know so many of us who have. And unfortunately, historically, the laws don't, as Shemeka mentioned, the laws haven't provided much justice. If I may just talk a little bit about that. Okay.
Yeah,
But
cool.
just, okay. Thank you, Karla. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, historically, the court systems have said that, you know, hair is something that can be changed. They haven't really looked at it as something that's connected to our Blackness, connected to race in the way that the Crown Act does, which is why it's so important to get this not only passed in all 50 states, but to have a federal law, which will definitely protect everyone, because it, you know, folks have been turned down from you know, getting raises and interviews and just various things, simply based on how their hair naturally grows. And so I think it's important that this type of legislation connects people with their hair texture, the way they wear their protective styles, and having that say, you know, stand and make a statement that says it's okay to be who you are authentically, something that connects you to your culture, something that empowers you, just like it does for Eurocentric, our counterparts, for European styles. I think it's important that we have this type of legislation to make that type of stand for us.
Thank you. And just another question. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the laws or studies surrounding hair care, or, you know, hair identity in general?
Sure. From what I've researched, there's a lot of like psychological journals that talk about like the impact of the bias of having that choice of, you know, how should I wear my hair? Should I wear it natural? Do I have to straighten it? Do I have to look a certain way to be accepted in my workplace, in the work culture? And talk about, you know, is that professional? What's considered attractive or not attractive, that sort of thing. And then there's other, you know, articles out there that really talk about the sociological aspect of it, the connectedness to understand how and why a court would connect race to Blackness, and really understand the importance of that to our culture. So yeah, there's lots of articles out there, and just, you know, case law. Generally, there's, you know, there's an airline case several years ago that you know, prevented a Black woman from, I think, having a braided hairstyle. There's other case laws about folks, you know, being discriminated on because of their dreadlocks, not being able to keep up with their look policies and things like that. And again, the courts historically have held that this rule of immutability, that that's something that can be changed, and that it's not genuinely germane to our race and our Blackness. So we just haven't been able to be successful historically in the court system, unfortunately.
Right. And why do you think a law like the Crown Act has just recently been passed? You know, like, what does this legislation mean to you, and what should it mean to everyone else?
I think it should mean, I want to be clear, like, a person who I think would bring a claim under the Crown Act would be faced with the same burden as anybody else, regardless of their race. They would have to prove that there's a connectedness between the way they wear their hairstyle to their identity, their racial identity. And that can connect with folks in a number of different ways. But for me personally, and from what the research I've seen, particularly Black women are the most impacted. And I think on just a number of levels, that would alleviate a lot of, like I said, a lot of the psychological pressures of, you know, how am I being perceived? How is this bias impacting me at my job? It would also, you know, just allow folks to have more of security in their job, knowing that they're protected under the law should they be discriminated upon. That's just a peace of mind that comes with that.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer. And last but not least, we will be moving on to Manka, who would be speaking about health and wellness within women of color with natural hair. So one question I wanted to ask you, Manka, is what are some of the health implications of natural hair discrimination? Some of these things I know that have to do with mental health, physical health, or financial health. So if you can just please tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, thanks so much, Karla. Hair discrimination, hair bias, whatever you call it, kind of this maltreatment of our hair really impacts all of our being. So I'm going to talk about them in three domains in particular. The first one is emotional health. And you can hear all the panelists talking about how the mismatch between what you expected, how you're expected to wear your hair and how you really want to wear it impacts your emotional being. So if you think you really want to wear your afro and somebody's telling you not to wear it, then you kind of have this mismatch of your not feeling comfortable in yourself, which that, if you're thinking about it, the biophysiological process, that's a stress response system in your body, which impacts your health. And then again, we know that hair is really tied to beauty and self-identity. So if you're not wearing your hair in a way that you think is beautiful, how does that impact your perception of beauty? How does that impact your identity? And if you're not feeling comfortable in who you are, how do you then go out and do things in a way that you're giving it your best? So you see, like at the emotional level, your hair can really, or hair discrimination can really impact the way you're presenting yourself to the community and to people out there. And then the other thing that is really sad is, especially for children, hair discrimination comes in the form of bullying. So if you hear about kids in the playground where they're pulling their hair, and bullying, we know there's a ton of research that says that kids who are bullied don't do well in school, have depression, have all of this mental health. So it's, imagine a 4 or 5 year old or 6, 7 year old being bullied on the playground, then having this long-term psychological effects that are really pertain throughout your lifestyle. So you just imagine this, some people call it little hair discrimination, now impacting somebody's long-term health outcomes. So that's like the emotional side of it. As a matter of fact, the American Society of Black Psychologists actually call hair discrimination aesthetic trauma. And I think that's a really good description of it, because it's something that happens that you really cannot understand why it's happening, and is very traumatic for your emotional well-being, and even to come to grips with it and understand it. And so it really disrupts a lot of your psychosocial emotional processes. So I think that's a really good description for it. And then the next thing we can talk about is financial well-being, and finances, we know that impact health. So like Crystal was talking about your hair and impacting you getting a promotion, or even impacting you getting a job. If you don't get a job, you don't have income. If you don't have income, you're not staying in a good house, you're not doing exercise, you're not eating healthy. If you're not eating healthy, you're getting hypertension, diabetes, and all of those chronic conditions. So if you think about the loss of income that is related to health, it can really just start a cascade of things that can impact your long-term health. And then research also shows that Black women actually are spending more money on their hair. And some of this is, voluntary. I want to wear my hair a certain way and I want to do whatever I want to do with my hair. But some of it, we know that is because you're trying to conform to this Eurocentric norms of beauty and standards that are set in place by the workplace. And so if you're spending money that you do not have to take care of your hair, then something has got to give. You're probably not using this money for something else. You're probably not using, maybe it was $10 that you could have signed up for a gym membership to lose weight and decrease your risk for obesity, diabetes, hypertension. You're using this money to make sure that your hair looks okay to go to work and work when, like I said, it could be that you don't even like the hair that you're trying to get, but you have to get it because you have to go to work and work. And so it's like this cascade of things that are really tied together, but they impact our long-term health outcomes. And then the last aspect is just your physical health. So there's a lots of stories about people. I'm not saying people should not wear their hair if they want to wear it straight or want to relax it, but there's also stories of people who have to do that because their job requires them to do it. And in so trying to do it, have had a hair loss because the heat or something has burned their hair. And so they've now had hair loss and all of those things that are related to chemical and heat treatment of your hair. So that also, it's like a physical health outcome directly. And then also, some people, there's some studies about kids who had their hair relaxed and they were afraid to go exercise because if they exercise, depending on the type of treatment that you have on your hair, it might it might not be straight anymore after you swim or after you run or whatever, however sweat gets into it. So you see people also refraining from healthy behaviors because it's going to impact their health. So it's like, there's so many things I can go into, but those are kind of the three domains of how hair discrimination impacts health. Yeah.
Wow, you brought up a lot of points, and I just wanted to interject really quickly because some of the things you mentioned, like for instance, the financial impacts of hair, like I never thought of it like that. I never thought of it as like a domino effect. Like if you don't have money, then you can't do your hair. You know, like it really is like a cascading effect. So that also leads me back to some of the emotional effects that it has. So me, I'm Dominican, you know. My hair is very curly, as you can see. And when I was younger, I didn't sport my hair this way. My mom and other family members would say that hair is very informal. You can't wear it. So I felt like I had to straighten it for an event, graduation, because I just felt like, you know, like if you look at pictures of my college graduation, I had straight hair. And it's like, now when I graduate from my master's, my hair is going to be like this. So it's just kind of like, I guess, like crazy to think about that pretty much people of your own kind would pass those ideologies down. And I really believed that up until my junior year of college, which was not too long ago. So I'm kind of glad I just overcame that and just, you know, broke that generational curse, if you will. So that way, you know, I can just really embrace the person who I am. And just one last thing, like the thing about hair is that about our type of hair that is very textured is you can't just wake up and leave the house. You know, like this hair, I don't wake up like this. There's a long process that goes to it. And that's also another thing that people don't understand. We try very hard to make sure that our hair is kempt. So it's like sometimes when we you know, experience microaggressions or receive discrimination toward this, like I actually put a lot of work into this. It's a different texture that you may not be used to, but it's still a texture. So I just wanted to bring that up. You brought up some amazing points. And just one last question I wanted to ask you: how does health policy and natural hair correlate?
Great question. And I wanted to circle back and comment on something you talked about. So when you're thinking about kind of causes of diseases, there's some people call it the social determinants of health, and you're thinking of how if you don't have money, you can't buy food. So there's like several layers back. And so there's like a domino effect of linking things and kind of how, like you mentioned, the time that you take to do your hair. You have to do that to look presentable. And then for people who are facing hair discrimination, they have to do it to make sure that they fit at their workplace. And so you could think of that time that could be spent connecting with a family member, connecting with friends, and doing other things. So it's always the cost of doing something else that you're wasting to do other things. And then in thinking about health policy and kind of hair discrimination and policy, so health policies basically refers to decisions, plans, and actions that we make or are put in place to achieve specific health goals. And so in thinking about all of the health things that we've talked about related to hair discrimination, the purpose of creating hair policies for several things. The first one that has been done, especially in the Crown campaign, like Crystal was talking about, was making sure that hair is part of race. That way, people know that if you're discriminating against somebody for their hair, it is tied to their race, and that is racial discrimination. And so whenever a policy is implemented, it does two things. It helps people know what is right. That way, whenever something is done wrong against somebody, then they have cause to, you know, bring about certain actions. So if something were to happen now, and we have a national Crown campaign or Crown Act, people can now sue against a company or something. So that's one of the things that a policy would do. The other thing that happens with health policies, the education piece that is implemented. So if you think of the Crown Act is passed in Minnesota and it bans hair discrimination in the workplace, and then employers have to now go back into those policies and make sure that there's no language that is discriminatory, because there's a policy that has been put in place to make sure that it's against the law to do that. So people now go back and start course correcting for all of these things that they've done wrong. And then the last piece is that it leads to education. So people learn, you know, news media, kind of society, community knows that this is wrong. And so everybody starts educating themselves. People start educating their family. Then people can even speak up. So that's when now we have cause to say, if somebody does a microaggression against somebody, that person already knows that it's the law not to do this. So they can speak up immediately and say what you did is wrong. And then you can educate kids to make sure that kids are not discriminating against each other, because it's wrong to do that. So it's like health policy really opens up an avenue for a lot of things to be done along education, advocacy, and things that we need. That's why we need policy around hair discrimination, because right now there's no avenue for us to begin to do all of these things in a kind of national way. And so national policy and kind of statewide policy is very helpful to get that going.
Got it. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to bring up pretty quickly, for those that may not know what the Crown Act is, it's a law that prohibits hair discrimination based on race, which is something that you mentioned. So usually Black women are the victims of this. So the law has been made to protect us. It is available in a few states. New York has it, California, New Jersey. I believe it was Virginia that recently passed a law. So, the ultimate goal of the law is to get it on a federal level. And even though there is a long way to go, I'm just happy to see every other week or so that a state has passed a law. So honestly, that makes me very happy. And it also helps my capstone project for school, so I can show everyone that moves are being made. So thank you so much for that. So we're gonna move to our Q&A now. So I actually received a question. Just wanna share it with you guys. Give me a quick second. Okay, so Annalise asked, what ways can we support enforcement of hair discrimination laws? Who would like to answer that?
Say that again.
She asked, what ways can we support enforcement of hair discrimination laws?
I would say, there's lots of groups that are working on getting this type of legislation either passed in their town, like locally in their municipality, or with their state legislation, and just contacting them directly, sharing your story, emailing, writing, calling, all of that gets documented. And the more the higher the numbers are, the more flooded they get with folks with like you, with requests to pass this type of legislation, the more it strengthens the chance that this type of thing will actually get passed. And then it also educates them. It helps them when they're on the floor, the congressional floor, to actually vote for things. They understand how it impacts their community. So the more we, like I said, just keep sharing your story, keep reaching out to your local, whether it's your city council folks or your state legislators, those types of things, they do count, they do matter, and they do help.
Got it. Thank you so much for your answer. And we received another question from Michelle. She asked, as an educator, she's a school social worker, what do you think is the best way to have our students embrace their natural hair at a young age? I really like this question, so I want to answer it real quick. One thing I would say, it all begins at home, and it all begins with the feedback that these students are receiving on their hair. This is a conversation that I always have time for, and it's the whole bad hair conversation. So I don't know if you ladies or anybody here has experienced somebody calling your hair bad, or somebody around you. People refer to bad hair as curly hair, and that's always something that I shut down, because the only bad hair is damaged hair. Like, there's no such thing. Texture is not related to good or bad. So I think it all starts from, giving those students positive affirmations. Your hair looks beautiful today when it's curly, when it's twisted, we have to, these changes start with us. So if you're telling these kids that they need to fall into Eurocentric standards, that they have to straighten their hair, they're going to straighten their hair and they're going to spend more money on it. But if you keep praising them about their natural hair, now that it's a big movement, I think they're going to be more likely to want to sport it and embrace it. We have another question from Dr. Eve Savage. What best practices are you all using to empower young girls to stand in their truth?
Hi, it's Bernice, and I wanted to give a verbal shout out to Curls on the Block, who has created a curriculum around young girls. Additionally, I know Dr. Patty Richardson has also created a curriculum as well. So just wanted to see if Curls on the Block would like to answer this question. Annalise.
Sure. Could you repeat it though? Because I was mid typing.
No problem. The question is,
Oh,
what best practices are you all using to empower young girls to stand in their truth?
oh yeah, definitely. Well, just like you said, that positive affirmations and things should start at home ideally. However, we know that our community, we have a lot of trauma and pain within our family sometimes, and sometimes moms don't know how to manage their own hair, let alone their kids' hair. So it doesn't always end up being supported at home. And you have girls who are adopted, you have girls who are mixed, and you have girls whose parents just also don't know what to do, just like I said. But I definitely do believe the YouTube references, hey, we have social media, like it was stated in the chat. But as an educator myself, definitely, I know the importance of making sure that in the communities that I am connected to and serving and doing outreach for, just making sure that I am, one, cognizant of myself and any facilitators that I may have going into schools to do my curriculum, that they have actually been trained to identify some of their own bias and prejudice against our own words and phrases and actions and reactions to our kids. And so it's definitely important to also offer space to talk about challenges, because kids as young as 4 are really already struggling with their own identity. And we see, if you're connected, you have access, right? So we know, look at the hashtag curl friends, afro, all of that. But some kids are not directed there yet. So we really have to continue to push it to even get more mainstream. But it's really also making sure we're checking ourselves first too. So not only just the starting at home, but internally making sure that our reactions to what our kids are saying and doing, it's not a shutdown, but it's an opportunity to have and hold space for their questions and provide resources that can support them. I also have written a children's book. We got to see more children's books that are talking and representing. We have Hair Love that really paved the way for appreciation of hair and just the struggles of growing up curly, and even parenting. So like all of those things, kind of work together. But obviously I appreciate the plug, but I'm always here to connect as well. So I can't be everywhere. And I know that even MVG Naturals is hosting crown workshops, doing virtual things now. And it's just really important to be able to see these things pop up in every state, city, school. So if you are like the social worker, it is unfortunately on us to make sure that we are getting the kids the access to the resources that we're finding, and overall just knowing that even if they don't change immediately, the kids are listening, they're watching, and they are going to learn and observe, and appreciate whatever investment. But I can tell you, it is pretty immediate. Kids will wear their afro as soon as they hit, after the first time they finish the curls in the block session. Their parents have literally run to me, oh, my daughter wants to wash her hair and wear her hair out. So if you're doing it right, the kids will start seeing the beauty in themselves. So just to recap, resources and just making sure the connections are given to students and providing space for them to kind of question. And I know even before, just knowing that we may not have all the answers either. So being vulnerable with the kiddos is important too. That's what I would say.
Got it. Thank you so much for that. And another question that I have is, what does advocacy look like for you on different levels in regards to hair discrimination? So anyone can answer this on the panel.
I'd be happy to answer that. I think it begins with the conversations of our friends and family. Being able to talk to our friends and family. Dr. Eve brought up a very powerful point in the chat that sometimes it is internal within our own culture that we're hearing these bad hair comments or Women are feeling like they have to wear their hair a certain way to find a date or be in a relationship with someone. And so our advocacy starts within. I call it leading from within. And many women, even if we are wearing our natural hair, we still have our own insecurities that we are when we're transitioning into whatever natural hair state we're in, or even if we're wearing our natural hair and wearing protective styles. We still have those instances where we have to deal with our own self-esteem, our own self-love within ourselves, and advocating for ourselves and within our circles. And with that is it's kind of like what I always like to say: we can show you better than we can tell you. And so when people can see your power illuminating, they can see you're standing up for yourself and being bold in these conversations, the advocacy becomes easy because people see what it looks like to advocate. And then you can take that into your workplace. You can take that into your community groups. You can take that to your girlfriends. Because I'm sure we have some really close, good girlfriends that are still getting relaxers. They're wearing protective styles. They're not 100% natural. They may have some color in it. So we have this spectrum of what we self-identify as natural too, that we're also internally within our culture fighting against and having to stand up for. So the advocacy journey does begin internally, and then it externally makes it easier for you to navigate in your community and in your fellowships, your social clubs, where you're hanging out. That gives that opportunity for us to expand that. And you'll find that on the Crown Campaign website, a lot of tools that you can use for advocacy at crowncampaign.com that are simple conversations you could begin. Being in the know, finding out whether or not your state is even pursuing the Crown Act at the state level, and if not, what you can do to get involved. It could be that you start with your county seat, your city seat, and begin those conversations because this is what's going to give power to it. Even if the Crown Act passed federally tomorrow, without the stories and the lived experience and people talking about it and educating about it and taking that advocacy step, that law has no power. You still have to prove that you're protected by lifting up that law and showing examples of how people are discriminated against that law or violating that law. Those are some few things I think that we could do starting tonight on how we can be involved with advocacy. And I'm happy to lift that up again. The crowncampaign.com website has some flyers, some downloads that you can begin the conversation in your Good Girlfriends text thread tonight to begin advocacy.
Got it. Thank you so much. And we have our last question from Rumana. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Her question is, what if the family you grow up in does not internally and externally feel confident in being bold about their own discrimination they face? How can kids with parents who are not comfortable speaking up find support?
I'll take this one. It's tough. I'm not gonna say it's easy. I know my first reaction, or one of the first reactions I heard when I first went natural is, why did you do that? And then I've heard other colleagues of mine say that their family was, traditional and didn't support their decision either, but that over time they grew to, as they, through us were educated, they grew to accept and love and, even choose some natural hairstyles themselves. So it's not always, easy to step out there, but the support I think is out there definitely through the Crown Campaign, through, various Facebook groups and chat groups. There's just so much community around natural hair. And I think that's where the confidence starts, at least the foundation for me, at least. And that's why I found, that boldness to do that. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for that, Crystal. And just before we close off, I just wanted to bring an important point, which is something that we are living in right now. You know, we're all living through a pandemic. This is something fairly new to a lot of us. And, you know, there's a lot of other things that are going to come up as far as hair discrimination in relation to COVID. You know, hair salons are a business that require a lot of, you know, in-person contact. And if you're practicing social distancing, you're not doing your hair in a salon. So, you know, that just kind of brings like the, I guess, the problem of what's going to happen when, you know, everyone can go back to work and your hair is not looking how you want it to look, because unfortunately you weren't able to do it during the pandemic, or maybe you didn't have enough money. You know, maybe that $1,200 stimulus check did not cover everything, because I almost blew through that. There's like $10 left. So, you know, there's like a lot of implications that come with hair. So I just wanted to tie that back down to the point of this conversation, is that everything is literally deeper than hair. Like, it's not just a beauty thing. It's about what women are going to deal with when they go back to work. And, you know, like I said before, their hair is not appropriate for the workplace. So, you know, I just want everyone in here to think about that. And yeah, so thank you all so much for attending the inaugural Deeper Than Hair conversation. I was so nervous about this, but it turned out great. Thank you, God. And I really appreciate all your contributions, all your questions. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. This honestly would not have been able to be done without you. This shout out is to my professor. I hope you give me a good grade on this assignment. I worked really hard and I spent a lot of time planning it. And yeah, thank you to all of our lovely guests. I really appreciate it so much from the bottom of my heart. She got to give me an A+, right?
Love it. Absolutely. Give her an A+.
Please.
We did put in our information in the chat where you can reach out. We'll be having some more of these conversations continue throughout the summer in the Deeper Than Hair series. So please check out our social media. Dr. Amala has produced a hair story animated short. She's also produced the song Deeper Than Hair. So please go to the website and check these things out. More tools for engagement and how to start those advocacy conversations within our friends and family network. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you all. I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you once again.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.